my high school wrestling coach told us one time early on, become a student of the game.
Sure.
And, that meant going out, scouting other teams, going to clinics, going to see other college teams. See, everybody does things differently, and try
Sure.
to go out and get a more global perspective of things. So I've tried to apply that to a lot of different things. I applied it to elevators early on.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today, our guest is Bill Appelbaum with LCD Elevator. Bill started in the industry as a truck driver in Washington, D.C. in 1990. Over his 33 years, Bill has served in a variety of roles, including sales, operations, management, and as vice president. Bill has enjoyed a varied career and has now happily returned to his primary passion of modernization sales and project management. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
You bet. I'm excited to be able to talk more. I know we've been chatting off and on for I don't know, 10 or 12 years. It seems like it's been a while.
Yeah.
And excited to just get to know you a little bit better and talk more about your career. And I always love to start with the question of how did you get into the elevator industry?
I was 19 years old, and I was dating a girl that I later married. And her father, one Sunday night, called us to the dinner table and told me I was starting as a truck driver the following Monday.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll be here. And it was in Washington, D.C. With Amtech Reliable at the time. Later
Nice.
became Amtech Elevator Services. And I started there driving a truck, 19 years old, delivering parts, sweeping the warehouse, shipping, receiving, all those good things that happen on the back end, and really learned the business from the backside in.
So tell me just a little bit about your father-in-law, Bill.
Sure. Joe DeMayo is a career professional elevator sales guy. Still selling today. He's selling for Kencor and just loves it. He over 50 years in the industry. Otis, General, Amtech, General, Thyssen, and now with Kencor, and still going strong. He goes into the office, I think, a few days a week, and just doesn't want to retire, but because he loves working and loves the industry that much.
That's cool. And he was able to I guess, have enough sway to say, hey, hire this kid, put him in a truck and see if he can make it.
Exactly right. And do the same thing when I got into sales, pretty much the same routine. Take a chance on this kid, put him in sales, and see
Awesome.
if he makes it. And here I am.
Right. Did you know he was looking for a job for you, or did
No, I didn't. I didn't.
he just surprised you?
You
now have a job.
I was there for a visit. They had moved down a few months prior, and I was just down there for the weekend, and that's how he closed out the weekend Sunday night with that
That's amazing.
notification. I knew he was in the elevator industry. I didn't know what he did.
Sure.
I knew he was in sales and then got promoted to management, but
Okay.
I really didn't know anything about the industry until I showed up the first day. And my first task was stripping an old Otis controller that was sitting in the warehouse that was being modernized. They ripped out the controller, old relay logic, coppers, carbons, and I was told to take it apart and organize the parts. So that's what I did.
Okay.
For about maybe a day and a half. And then I don't know if that was an initiation test or what, but I went at it until someone told me to stop. And then I had to go and deliver some parts to a mechanic in downtown DC.
Right.
Really, rolling into DC was an incredible sight. I had been there before, but just driving through
For
there with
sure.
the buildings, the majesty of the buildings, the Capitol building, just
Sure.
so white. It was whiter than I ever remembered. It was pretty cool. And then I got to the building. I found the mechanic, had the little box of parts, and he said to me, "Do you want to see where these go?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, let's
That's cool.
see where they are." So it was a bag of door lock contacts, and the mechanic took me to the elevator, opened the door, and showed me exactly where they went and how that whole thing worked. And this is connected to that. I was hooked. I was hooked right
Really?
there. This
That
is
right,
cool.
I was going to ask you that. At
Yeah,
what point did
that
it
was
kind of
it.
click for you that this is the place?
Yeah, that was it. Out there with the guys. The maintenance guys all became friends and resources. I got thrown into the inventory, not manager. I was doing it temporarily. Our inventory manager went out for surgery,
Right.
so it was on me. I had the warehouse and parts, and
How long had you been there when they said, "Hey, you're now in charge of the warehouse"?
I bet I was there probably 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I started September 19th, 1990. I want to say mid-November. He was out for surgery, or maybe December. But uh, now I'm at the helm. And
Right.
I'd have mechanics call me, and this one guy would call me up and say, "Hey, take out your Adams book." All right,
Right.
let me find the Adams book, flip through it, and I'll go to the copper contacts, carbons, whatever it was, relays. He would tell me exactly where it was in the book, what I'm looking for. And, sometimes I didn't find exactly what he wanted, but I got close. And sometimes I was wrong and we had to go to another source. But there were a lot of guys that helped me out. And
Well, it sounds like it. I mean,
yeah, it was interesting.
I was honestly expecting when you first said you started brand new and delivering these parts that maybe there would be some pushback, like who is this kid and why is he here? And but it sounds like they just kind of sucked you in and said, "Hey, you're one of us. Let me show you
Yeah.
how this
Yeah. There
works."
was, there was some of that, you're this young kid that came down from Philadelphia and now you're in DC. Like, who are you? Who you related to? Everybody they always wanted to know, how'd
Right.
you get the job? You got to
How'd you
be
get here?
related. So yeah, we went through that too, but for the most part, everybody was helpful, and a lot of good guys down there in DC.
So how long did you do the warehouse management? How long was he gone
Did
for?
that did that for Amtech for about 2 years,
Wow.
and it was in DC and Baltimore, and then for some reasons close to home, I needed to get close to home, so I got a job at Montgomery Elevator. It was still Montgomery back then.
Sure.
They had bought Suburban Elevator in King of Prussia outside of Philly. And I worked there for about 2.5 years or so in a similar role, but a little bit bigger because Montgomery was doing a lot of new construction in Philly. 92, 93, 94 were big construction years in Philly, and Montgomery had a big share of that work.
Right.
So it was bigger equipment, bigger jobs, bigger office, big warehouse, and I managed that for about 3 years as well. And then I I got into sales. I got my first shot at sales.
Right.
Back to Amtech.
Okay.
Uh, Hired as a sales trainee for about 4 hours, and then I was a sales rep.
4 hours. Oh, that's impressive.
That may be an exaggeration, but it was a quick training program.
Right.
As
Right.
soon as
Right.
the first customer called with an issue, and I'm looking around for who's going to handle this, and realized it was me.
It was you. Yeah.
Training was over.
I mean, at least you
Training.
knew the parts, right? I mean, you'd been at it
That's
three or
right.
four, what, 4 or 5 years, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, about 5 years in at that point. Yes.
it's a pretty good start. I would think at least to just having spent that time in the warehouse. Did you see yourself going into sales? I mean, is that something you were pursuing, or was it?
I, I didn't. I hadn't really thought about it. It was a little intimidating to me, and I think that kept me from actively pursuing it. Uh,
Right.
I I had some other sales jobs along the way, working part time here and there, and
Sure.
so I guess I warmed up to it. But once I started back at Amtech and went out and met my first customer, a couple of customers, just tried to work through the problems and realized that I knew more than they did, but I was here to help them. It
Sure.
got easier. It
Oh yeah,
wasn't,
yeah.
and even cold calling. You put an expectation, and I tried to teach this to a lot of the sales reps that worked for me later. That expectation of a first visit of a cold call, just don't expect anything. All you
Sure.
got to do, just go in, leave your card, and be memorable.
Right.
Because the first time, next time, maybe the 10th time, they're fed up with their elevator company and they have an issue, then
They're gonna call
they're going
you.
to look for your card. I remember that guy came in here a couple of months ago, year ago, what have you,
Right.
and they'll find you. And that's what happens. And then networking, the golf outings, BOMA, IFMA, these
Sure.
organizations, just be out there, be visible. Again, not trying to sell anybody on the first meeting, but once they have a need and you've already created rapport with them, it may be 3 months, it may be a year, maybe 3 years.
Sure.
But it's a long sales cycle. Sometimes it's a long career, and things take time.
Yeah. So were you mostly on the service repair side initially then?
I initially service and repair, yep, and then I got into modernization. At Amtech, we had a territory, so we handled everything in that territory.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I had New Jersey to start, so there weren't huge modernizations at that time. But a few months in, I was able to handle a modernization, and we had a great mod team at Amtech. Jim Freeman Sr. led that for the whole country, and we
Wow.
happened to have him. He was from New Jersey, so we had the luxury of having him in our office. So I was, next to the national mod director.
Right.
I stayed next to him as often as I could and to try to learn as much as I could. And he helped me a great deal as I was young and working on various size projects, and then eventually on some huge projects.
Right.
But having him there definitely helped me develop in modernization, and just that whole process of taking the old elevator and doing what it needs to become new again was.
Right.
And every job's
Probably
different. Every job is different. You can't just look at it as a
true.
cookie cutter project. And learning what to look for, what's going to affect us, why do we need to look at this? There's 10 different things that are affected by that one item. You
Right.
gotta get every measurement right. You got to get all the information.
Absolutely. So from service to mod, I mean, which of the I guess niches within sales is kind of
Yeah,
your favorite? Where did you really feel like you thrived the most?
I I was successful in service sales, but really modernization is that's my favorite by
You
far.
love it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
far. And now I'm doing it full time again.
Right.
So I've come full circle, and I've been a lot of places in between, but now I'm at LCD Elevator, great independent company, owned 3 owners, all about my age, and great people to work with. Uh, and I'm selling and project managing modernization.
Nice. Nice. Well, and you mentioned, a couple companies that have sold that, that you'd worked for. You'd worked for, obviously Montgomery had sold to Kone and Amtech to Otis. So how did consolidation affect you and your career? And I mean, you were like right in the middle of it, sounds like.
Yeah, Well, Amtech in Pittsburgh was was a branch that I started with Mark Freeman and Tom LaMartina. Mark sent me out there. I think his first day as the branch manager in New Jersey.
So there was nothing there, and he just said,
Nothing,
"Hey, go here and start a
nothing,
new brand."
nothing. Yeah, we ended up bidding on a large federal project, and it was the same project team for GSA that was out of Philadelphia that Amtech had done
Okay.
huge project with a couple of years prior. Now they were doing a job in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So Mark put me in charge of that. So that was really my first time being in Pittsburgh. Was there for a pre-bid meeting the morning after I was told to be there. I
Right.
flew out that night and fell in love with the city. My first time through the tunnel, I fell in love with it and worked on that project for about 6 months. We were eventually awarded the job, and now we had something to start with. So
Sure.
I started cold calling, networking for probably 2 years. Probably 2 years. Knocked on every single door. I would just go block by block,
Sure.
by office, highlight all the buildings that I stopped in, catalog everything, get my CRM built, and start networking. Again, the golf outings, the BOMA functions, any type of organization I could find, and we went. It was basically three of us. It was me, Mark, and Tom.
Right.
And started going to every function we could. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we started knocking down contracts, big
Right.
contract, NC Park, USX Tower,
Cool.
big projects. And we built a nice business in the course of about 2.5 to 3 years. And then Amtech sold their Cincinnati office.
Right.
And it was the first time that I'd been involved with just one branch being sold off.
Right.
And I was a little bit involved in it being in Pittsburgh. Tom was the vice president and he ran Cincinnati as well. So I helped him out, going out, meeting some customers, trying to collect some old money, trying to clean up some issues, and then
Sure.
transitioning the modernization contracts to the Otis team. So once that was happening, I started looking at Pittsburgh as a very low overhead office. We had a handful of huge projects, huge
Sure.
maintenance contracts. We had the one big modernization going, a couple smaller ones, and I thought maybe Pittsburgh could be the next one sold off.
Right.
So I went out there. I moved out there, physically moved
Sure.
out there. Family went, and I did that for that opportunity to start the office and run the office that I had started. And then, I just kind of saw the writing on the wall and thought maybe this is going to go away. If we get bought by Otis, then I'll be a sales rep again or whatever.
Sure.
And at that point in my career, I wanted more. I had invested
Yeah.
years of a solid year of living in a hotel and
Wow.
commuting back and forth from Philly. So I had a lot invested in that, and I wanted to succeed and run it as a manager. I really didn't think that was going to happen for the long haul. So by that time, there was kind of a shift from Amtech to Thyssen of personnel.
Okay. I just want, yeah, because
Yeah, so my friends from Amtech had gone over to Thyssen, so I had a home pretty quick, and I was hired over at Thyssen, Pittsburgh.
so staying in Pittsburgh, I think, but just different company. Okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Instead of
I think
driving into the city, I drove 5 miles up the street.
right.
And Pittsburgh was great. I love the city. I still do. I visit there a couple of times a year. One of my best friends is still out there, Dave Kolich, who I met at Thyssen.
Right.
He was the super salesman out there. He built that office brick by brick, contract by contract,
Right.
and a key guy for me. being new guy there, and I was probably 28 at the time. Uh, I leaned on him, and he made that transition very easy for me. My first endeavor into branch management was there in the small Pittsburgh office.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been told that I think Pittsburgh's a Schindler town, I guess, because of the Westinghouse that was based there. So you had to
Yep,
kind of wrestle away those bids.
we did. We did. It was fun. It was fun. A lot of the contracts we had at Amtech were former Schindler contracts.
So moved to TK there and you were, like, say, branch manager there in Pittsburgh for a while.
Yes. Yeah, not as long as I would have liked. I would have liked to have stayed there a while longer, but there was some reorganization, some personnel changes, and I got recruited back to Philadelphia, where,
Okay.
well, maybe it wasn't even recruited. I got
Told.
new orders, reassigned.
Was it a promotion, or was it just
It
kind
was,
of a transfer? Okay.
yeah, it was a promotion. The Pittsburgh office was maybe 6 million a year, maybe 8 on a
Right.
good year, and Philly, King of Prussia, was 30 million, 32 million.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was a promotion, uh, but it was a much tougher assignment, especially early on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go from a smaller branch to something that big, and not knowing the area. I mean, you had kind of built the Philly operation from nothing, and so you got to know a lot of the people, a lot of the players, and yeah. So stepping into that new one, I can imagine it's a
Stepping
pretty
into
big.
there, and it was the King of Prussia was struggling. That Philly
Okay.
office was struggling, profitability wise. Really terrible maintenance margins, which had been one of the things that I thrived with from my Amtech days.
Sure.
Prior to going to Pittsburgh, I was in sales, but then I was reassigned to operations management.
Okay.
And the only operations I had was in the warehouse. I never worked in the field, but I had
Sure.
a couple of key guys working with me that I used to deliver parts to, and that was a tough transition.
Oh,
That
sure.
was one of the key moments in my career. Just backing up a little bit, Mark Freeman and Jimmy Freeman Jr. had the idea that they just wanted a businessman. That's how they explained it to me. They wanted a businessman running operations. It didn't
Gotcha.
matter that I was in sales and had never been in the field. They wanted a businessman running it. So that that was an easy sale. I was resisting at first until they really explained it that way. And I said, all right, this makes sense. So
So I
just
wanted
go
a
there.
different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, just make a business decision, not trying to fix everything. One of the best lines I ever heard that I carry with me, Eric Lazier, who's at AEG now, he
Right.
was our president at Amtech.
Okay.
And he came in, we were struggling in maintenance margins, and he came in and talked to the group, and he said, you know, our job here is to make money for the company and the shareholders. Fixing elevators is a fringe benefit. And that clicked, man, that rang so true. Uh, I carried that to this day. Our first responsibility was to make money. We got to have the right amount of
Sure.
people with right amount of material. We can't
Got to
buy
be
everything
profitable,
we
or
want.
nobody's
Got to be
elevator gets
profitable.
fixed. Right.
Exactly. So really, between that comment and just having the mindset of running it as a business and not really fixing them first, but fixing them profitably
Sure.
was a huge click for me, huge moment for me, and that carried me through operations management, branch management, all the way through.
What was it? I'm just curious. What obviously the philosophy, but how did you implement that? What were some things that you started to see that okay, we can change this?
Yeah, we started working everything backwards and working it mathematically. So if we get X amount of dollars per month on our maintenance
Sure.
contracts, how many people can we afford? Or how much
Right.
money can we afford? How do we want to separate that? How
Right.
many route mechanics do we want? How we can set it up how we want, headcount wise,
Sure.
structure wise, but we only have X amount to spend. Okay. So
Right.
we get 100,000 and we have to make 20,000. So you get 80,000 to spend.
Sure.
How do we want to spend it? And that was something I thought was pretty cool because it was away from the norm of deciding how many elevators are on a route, how many.
So what that was going to ask you, what was the norm? What was kind of the thinking that you stepped into that just wasn't working?
Yeah, the old norm would be, say, to assign a mechanic uh, 32 hours a week in
Right.
maintenance time,
Mhm.
okay, based on the number of elevators he has, and really a set number of hours per unit per month, whether it's
So
one
whether
for a
it's
hydro, two for a geared, four
okay,
for this. Let's just
so whether it's paying you $5 or $5,000, it didn't really matter. It was more about units and time. Okay.
right. So we shifted that, and we decided, well, let's see, let's load up our routes, or let's reorganize our routes.
Hmm.
They hadn't been adjusted in years, and we would say we had 20 routes, and we'd had a contract, and we would just pick a guy to throw it on without
Right.
really looking at all the routes. Well, there's a lot of overlap, and we had a lot of guys crisscrossing, passing each other on the road.
Same building maybe, and you're working on that one, and I'm working on these
Yeah,
two. That may not
yeah,
make sense.
just because that's how it's always been. And
Sure.
I know the superintendent, I know the receptionist, so that's my job. That was another thing that we stripped down, and it was painful for those
Oh, I was
route.
going to say you probably got all kinds of pushback, right? I mean,
We
start messing with the
we
status
sat,
quo.
yeah, we that's right, that's right. You're messing with people's status quo, their comfort level, their zone money, depending on where the job was.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we sat in a room for probably 3 days, bringing three or four guys in at a time and going through the same speech. I think we did a morning and an afternoon session. We went through the same speech, handed out the new route sheet. There's yours, and give them a couple minutes to flip through it. And here come all the
Grumble about it.
complaints. Yeah, here come all the complaints, all the objections, all the reasons you guys can't do this. But we did it. We stayed strong and we did it. And another kind of way out of the box thing we did was uh, Jimmy told me that I have 100 people in my organization. I can do whatever I want with them. Well, what do you mean? Well, we had the University of Pennsylvania contract back then,
Right.
and we were struggling. We had three full-time guys there, but it might have been too much, and it had gone years with that same approach. And
Sure.
whatever these three guys could maintain and fix, that's all we
That's what
had
we
there.
did. Sure.
What we did. They get done as much as they can. But we've been talking one night about how we can get the job cleaned up and how we can maybe do a blitz of the job.
Oh,
And
wow.
that Jimmy said, you got 100 guys. What can you do with them? Let's block out 3 days and get everybody there. We took every mechanic we had,
Wow.
except for resident mechanics where they had 40 hours
Sure.
dedicated at a building. We paired out, maybe 10 to 20 guys. So we had 75 or 80 people at the University of Pennsylvania. And I had flashcards, postcard, file cards, index cards
Right.
with the tasks on them. You got this building, here's the tasks. And I'd just
Right.
hand them out. And we had a home base set up in one of the conference rooms there. And the team would go, or the mechanic would go, helper would go out, complete their task, come back. Here's another
A new
card.
card.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was unbelievable what we got done there. We got done there to try and save that contract. And we spent a ton of money on that contract, that those 2 3 days. But again, uh, we had this much money to spend
Sure.
in the month,
Right.
and didn't really matter where the labor was at that point. So that's kind of a philosophy shift, and that's an extreme example, but
Right.
that type of philosophy helped carry me through to really figure out how to run a service business.
Well, yeah, it sounded like you were willing to think outside the box, challenge the status quo, and I mean, I'm assuming you did save that contract for at least for a while, and I'm sure it paid for itself to just invest
We
in
did. Yeah,
that.
we saved it for a while. It did become a casualty at the contract later down the road. Uh, but for the time being, we saved it, and showed really the customer and our all of our employees, including management, that we were willing to take risks and do what it took. Not just, oh well, this is we got our three guys there. I guess they'll get to it when they can. No, we're gonna we're gonna do something different here.
Right. Right.
People were
Well,
skeptical, but once we did it, it paid dividends in a lot of different areas.
well, I imagine just the camaraderie you built. That hey guys, we're gonna get together. We're gonna tackle this thing that's really big, and they probably talked about that for years. Hey, you remember when we
Right,
went
right,
there, and
right. Yeah, absolutely.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, we kind of got to move back to Philly and got the
Yeah,
promotion. What was kind of your story from there? You had mentioned as we were talking earlier about a lot of change,
yeah,
lot of turbulence or whatever you want to call it in
yeah,
those days.
yeah. It was a lot of turbulence. The branch wasn't doing well, and again, we're talking maintenance. Maintenance profitability was the
Hmm.
biggest there, and been through some things already. I've
Sure.
learned things, and I got to use Eric's line probably 2 weeks in there. Fixing elevators is a fringe benefit. It's a pretty cool one, but we got to make money first.
Sure.
There was a lot of disgruntled employees there at the time. There was a bonus structure in place for operations, and the operations team hadn't received a bonus in many, many quarters,
Years.
say
Right.
4 quarters. Yeah. Uh, so they were under the impression that corporate or the region was just messing with the bonus plan, and they weren't
Sure.
getting. So I went through a couple of meetings where they're like, "Well, what's the sense in doing this if we're not going to get a bonus anyway?" I said, "All right, let's stop there."
Sure.
Went to the whiteboard. I said, "Here's the 5 criteria for the bonus plan." Went down. All right, we need to be at X% to make the bonus. Where are we? And I had everybody with their income statements out. I don't think they had ever been given an income statement, but they had it now. And I made them all find the page and
Find the
the
right
number on the
number here.
page. Yeah. So they found it. And I said, okay, does that qualify? No. Next criteria. There were 5 criteria for profitability and then 2 for safety. The safety was good. They had
Sure.
those.
Good.
Uh, but the 5 profitability were not there. But going 1 through 5, showing what we needed and where we are, open their eyes that, oh, there's a formula here.
Right.
Yeah, it's not.
We're not just getting stabbed in the back by these greedy
Yeah,
people in
it's
the
just
ivory tower. It's we just
exactly
didn't perform.
right. It's not just they don't like you. Let's look at the
Right.
numbers. Math doesn't lie. So I've uh, I've used that example many times over, because
Sure.
it was a big transition for that group, a big learning experience and eye opener, and it actually turned everything around
Wow.
almost immediately. Where that group of field supervisors who had been mechanics and now were
Sure.
managers, right? They wanted to fix every elevator as soon as they could. They had 11 non-billable repair teams reporting to the office, and they would assign them work, and maybe by 9 o'clock they'd be out on a job and back by 3:30, or dropping the truck off by 4 or what have you. And that went away. We got back to, how many people can we afford? How
Sure.
do you want to set this up? How many repair teams do we need?
You
Most of
said
them need to be
11
billable.
non-billable teams. That's a lot of overhead if I'm interpreting that correctly.
Overhead. It's a lot of overhead. Actually, some of them were doing billable work, but there were 11
Okay.
teams. I would say
Right.
8-3 ratio, non-billable to billable.
Wow.
Yeah, that went away quick as soon as those guys saw those numbers, of how their bonus was calculated. And
Right.
that was in July, and our fiscal year ended September. So in 9.5 months, we were failing miserably. But in 2.5 months, we actually made as much as we made the previous 9.5.
Wow.
Yeah, we doubled our profitability, dollars and percentage, in
In
the
two and a half
last,
months.
yeah, which gave us a ton of momentum into the next year, into the next quarter, so on and so
Sure.
forth. Those guys never missed. They never missed another quarterly bonus, and they were
Wow.
growing. Yeah, everyone was bigger than the previous for years, for
Right.
several years there. And we went on a pretty good run from that was 2000, July of 2003 when I got there.
Right.
4 or 5, I think it was 07, we became a district. And that was a testament to how well
Sure.
the entire team did. And it wasn't just in service. Modernization was in a similar situation. We were able to turn that around by standardizing our estimating, and just setting ourselves up, being more selective with the projects that we sold, being
Sure.
realistic. We I want to say it was 2008. We took home the award for the highest profitability in modernization in the
Wow.
country for Thyssen.
Wow.
Yeah. New installation was another success story. Uh, ThyssenKrupp was a security elevator office, which was a Dover distributor, Dover rep for years and years. Uh, some pretty good projects, some big projects in the city, but in more recent years would do maybe one or two a year.
Right.
Nothing major. Um, and I wanted to turn that around. Uh,
So tell me, who were some of the people that you really felt like helped you hit that level of success?
sure. Bill Walthies was the modernization manager. He ran the department, along with Jim Chorney ran operations, field supervision. John Andrews ran in-house estimating, project management, and really that team uh, got everything together. Uh, really turned around, and again, it was every department at that point. It was service was fixed, construction was fixed with that team, and now modernization came together. So really, it just rounded out that entire operation to make King of Prussia branch one of the best in the country. So again, with reorganization, I I was able to recruit Catherine Bashevsky from Las Vegas. She was supposed to go to Allentown,
Oh,
but
wow.
I made made some deals to where she came to King of Prussia and took over construction because I knew nothing about it at the time.
Right.
Still know nothing compared to her, but she was able to come in and we built this team with Jeff Smith came up from Richmond, Mike
Sure.
Bennett came from LA,
Right.
and built a great construction team there. Pat Williams was our foreman out in the field, and yeah, they were able to come in and sell some huge projects. Comcast Center One
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
was
Yeah.
just a massive project that really just took our branch, our district to the next level. We were improving year over year, and then Comcast really just put us over the top to
Sure.
where we one of the leaders for the company from as a branch. So yeah, those types of things just yeah, and thinking outside the box. We're going to send another manager to Allentown. Well, no, She's an expert in construction sales. We're a big city. We have
Sure.
very little construction. Like, let's put these pieces together to where
The way
we
they make
can,
sense.
yeah. I mean, I know it's complicated having two managers in the same office, but we'll figure it out. We'll work through it.
Cool. Cool. So that's how you yeah, I mean it's how you succeeded. It's what needed at the time, I guess.
Yeah, exactly right. And that was a big transition point as well. It was a big moment for the company and for that branch and really for my career.
So Bill, tell me a little bit about your current structure, where you're working, what you're doing there.
Yep. Yep. I'm with LCD Elevator. We are an independent elevator company, three owners. Uh, they're all around my age, and these guys, it's a lot different than what I'm used to, but I mean that in a good way. It's a lot better. Stu Tenzer, Richie Clark, and Steve Liosa are all working owners, uh, which means they're not just sitting there counting money. They're owners. They're
Sure.
workers. Stu handles sales and finance. Richie handles modernization and new construction. He project manages projects. He helps me every time I need some help, which sometimes is often. And Steve handles maintenance and repair, and actually is our top troubleshooter. So
Oh wow.
when there's a problem nobody else can fix, Steve goes out and fixes it. Richie does the same on modern new installations. So uh, they're not they're not typical owners.
Right, right, right.
They're involved. They're day to day, ground floor guys, and it's refreshing. It's very cool for me being in mod sales and project management. I get to work with all three of these guys, and it's been a pleasure. I've been there just over 2 years, and it's a
You,
great situation.
right. You said it's different than what you're used to. What do you love most
Yeah.
about kind of being that close to the ownership, to the leadership?
Uh, the lack of layers. So in your multinationals or your bigger independents, there's layers of management. Before you get to the owner, and
Sure.
the same holds for customers. Customers can get to ownership. Employees can get to ownership. So those layers are gone. They're non-existent, and it just makes for a really great working environment.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, what I mean, obviously we could probably chat a lot more, and I know we're
Yeah.
kind of getting close to our time, but what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned that really felt like, made all the difference? I mean, you've touched on a few, but
Yeah.
just some.
One of the things that I thought about since we last spoke was uh, I had my high school wrestling coach told us one time early on, become a student of the game.
Sure.
And, that meant going out, scouting other teams, going to clinics, going to see other college teams. See, everybody does things differently, and try
Sure.
to go out and get a more global perspective of things. So I've tried to apply that to a lot of different things. I applied it to elevators early on. Um, John Graham was one of my early bosses, and he was always at the office late. And once the office cleared out, a lot of times it was just the two of us. Maybe the mod group was still working. I would say they were
Right.
working on West Coast jobs,
Right.
But I would go in and just sit with John, and he'd be there with they'd smoke back in the office. They'd
Sure.
smoke in the office back in
Back in the
those,
old days. Right.
yeah, the old days. And he'd be sitting there with his smoke and maybe a afternoon coffee, going through the P&L statement. And he's making notes, and then he'd show me what he was looking at and say, "See here, we're low in profit here, but we're doing really well here. But we need this number to be better." And I'm 24, 25 years old at the time, but just
Right.
sitting there with him at his desk after hours, no phones ringing, no chaos, no crises going on. I was able to learn a lot from John about reading those statements and
Sure.
really not just reading them, but what can we do about them? What do we need to focus on that can
Sure.
fix
Sure. What are the
so it looks
levers
a
that
heck of a
are
lot better next month?
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
types of things. So those were really good lessons for me, in my foundation to be a manager later on. Uh, but one of the simplest lessons I ever heard is one of the funniest, but also when you think about it, it's very true. Uh, we had a repair manager. His name was Dick Massey, and as young sales reps, if we sold something, you'd be elated for about 30 seconds because you were getting that commission. And
Right.
then it hit you. You got to go back to Dick's office and explain what you sold and what you were thinking. Like, oh man, are we ready for this? We better have all of our information, all of our answers. And Mark DeCachinas was a young sales rep with me. He and I
Yeah.
grew up together in sales.
Cool.
And one time, Mark had sold some camera wiring. So we went back in Dick's office, and Mark's making his sales pitch. He says, "Dick, I sold some coax. We're going to run some coax for the security guys, just from the machine room to the car." And Dick says, "Well, what's the rise? What's the travel?" And
Right.
Mark said, it's a three stop. It's a hydro. It's a three stop. And Dick was smoking, and he said, "The Washington Monument's two stops." And when I still laugh about it. It was 30 years ago. We laughed so hard about that. Like, you just never had the answers. But the question is so valid. You know,
Sure.
the Washington, and I use that. I tell people
You
that
you can't assume, right, that it's
that's
a
right.
stand.
So, and in modernization, nothing is standard.
Right.
I don't let anybody say, "Oh, it's standard." There's no such thing.
Right.
And if I have to break out the Washington Monument story to prove my point, I'll do it.
Yeah. Love it.
I'll do it. But everybody I've told that story to, when it applies and when I need to use it, they get it.
We
They
get
get
it.
it.
Sure.
Everything has to be measured. Everything has to be considered. There's no standards, and communication is key. You're not just nobody's asking these questions just to quiz you, just to stump
Right.
you. You know, uh, I
You
deal
got to
with
know your
it
stuff.
with it
Right.
today. You got to know your stuff. One of our owners, Richie Clark, I'm still learning from him to this day. And he'll ask a question, and I'll think, "Wow, I didn't think about that. I should have, but I was trying to get something done, and I didn't think about that, but I'll find out because that
Sure.
makes sense." Um, so really, those are some good lessons, whether it's for sales reps and expectations in cold calling, expectations in sales cycles, managing a business,
Right.
being profitable, and surveying an elevator to get you needed
Right.
information, A,
Sure.
to price it, and B, to execute the project. Just having clear communication and getting all the information, because nothing's standard in this
Right.
business.
Right. Well, this may be redundant, but I'm just curious. If you were to give some advice to somebody who's just starting out, brand new, don't even know what they've attached themselves to yet, what would you say to them?
I think it would be just to learn as much as you can, become that student of the game,
Mhm.
because you really don't know where you're going to end up, or what opportunities you're going to be faced with,
True.
whether it's just having a weekend and now you're a truck driver in the elevator business, or being comfortable in your sales job and now you're an operations manager, or sitting in $6 million a year Pittsburgh office to being thrown to Philadelphia at 32 million. So that, with a lot of other challenges. So there's things that you can do. Just learn everything along the way, because really you don't know where you'll end up. I happen to learn about modernization and loved modernization sales, selling it, managing it. Uh, and now, 33 years later, I've done a lot of different things, but now I'm right where I enjoy being, in mod
Sure.
sales. And I have that history of my experience of seeing a lot of different perspectives. So
Yep.
now I understand a lot of other perspectives as well, but I'm in a position where I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And, certainly wasn't a linear trajectory for me. I went up and down in a lot of different directions to get here. But, just learning one thing and just doing sales your whole career is limiting. So
Sure.
I think learning various roles, various aspects of the business, you know, you're limitless at that point.
Sure. Opens up all kinds of opportunities to
Exactly.
kind of write your ticket, honestly. That's what I see.
Yeah, and maybe it's out of necessity. Maybe you're in a transitional spot in your career, but I can do that. I can take a job doing that or this
Yep.
or the other. It doesn't always have to be sales or just management, but there's other things I can do. I'm able to do. So that opens up more doors for you as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Bill, thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, you're
I
welcome. I've
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
it.
Well, thank you and good luck to you.
Thanks, Matt. I'll talk to you
Yep.
soon. All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.